couple more examples. 16 raised to the 0 power. Remember that rule said anything to the 0 power will be 1. 99 to the 0 power will be 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, 1/16 to the first power. Okay, here we can follow our rule about raising something to the first power, or we can just say that we have 1/116. So I'm going to have 1/116, and that would be my answer. Okay, this one, my base is 1, and my power is 15. So it means 1 is a factor 15 times. So if I start to do this, now I'm going to get tired before I do that 15 times. But if I think about it, I can save myself from writing that out 15 times. If I just think about what it means. If I multiply 1 times 1, I'm going to get 1. If I multiply times 1 again, I would still get 1. Times 1 again, I would still get 1. So no matter how many times I multiply 1 by itself, I'm still going to get 1. So if I said 1 to the 215th power, my answer would still be 1. I'd like for you to do some practice problems now. The first one is 8 squared. The second one, 10 to the third power, or 10 cubed. The third one, 200 to the first power. And the fourth one is 3 to the fourth power. As soon as you copy the problems down, stop the tape and work them. The practice problem answers. The first one, 64. The second one, 1,000. The third one, 200. And the fourth one is 81. Now we will begin our work with order of operations. First thing we'll do is I will give you a problem before I give you any rules, and we'll see what would happen if we didn't have a rule for order of operations. Suppose we wanted to work the problem 8 plus 3 times 4. Now, if nobody told us what order to do this problem in, we could really do it two different ways. One way to do it would be just to go straight through from left to right and do whatever we saw. 8 plus 3 would give us 11. Times the 4 would give us 44. So that's one thing that might happen. Or, let's do it another way. Let's do our multiplying first. If we did our multiplying first and started here, we would get a 12, and then we'd have 8 plus 12, and we'd come up with 20. Now that's a problem. There shouldn't be a problem in arithmetic that has two answers. 44 and 20 could not both be answers. So because of this, we have some rules that tell us the correct order to work our problems in, and we follow those rules throughout our work. So let's look at those rules. These are our rules for the order of operations. The first thing you do is you work inside grouping symbols. And you don't need to write this down when you're studying the rules, but you always start from the innermost grouping symbol outward. Our grouping symbols are things like parentheses, braces, or brackets. So if you have any of these symbols, parentheses, braces, or brackets, those are your grouping symbols. You always begin inside your grouping symbols. Okay, after you've done your work inside your grouping symbols, then you simplify any expressions that contain exponents. So you do your grouping symbols, then you work with exponents. The third rule says to multiply and divide from left to right. The fourth rule says to add and subtract from left to right. I'm going to put a big star beside the rule here. This is probably one of the most important rules you'll ever have in a math course, because just about everything we do from here on out will depend upon these rules. So you definitely need to write the rules down and study them. And keep referring back to them until you get very comfortable with them. You might even on the test be asked to state the rules, because the rules are very important. So you work inside grouping symbols first, then you simplify any expression that contains exponents. The third thing you do is multiply and divide from left to right, and the fourth thing is add and subtract from left to right. Now, as I'm doing the rest of the problems in today's lesson, I will be using these 4 rules. So you need to have these rules written down on a sheet of paper beside you so you can refer to them as we're trying to decide what we need to do first in a problem. Now, before we do anything new, I want us to go back to the problem we were just working on and see which one is the correct answer. Now, if we think about our rules, our first rule said work inside symbols of inclusion or grouping symbols like parentheses. We don't have any parentheses, so we can skip that rule and go to the second one. The second rule says to work with our exponents. Well, we don't have any exponents, so we can skip over that rule. Our third rule says to multiply and divide from left to right. So it tells us we have to do our multiplication and division before we do our adding and subtracting. So if we look at our problem, 8 plus 3 times 4, we must do that multiplying first, which means we must do it this way. We have to do the 3 times 4 first and get the 12, and then we can go back after we finish doing our multiplying and dividing, then we can do our adding and subtracting from left to right. So the correct answer was the 20.